Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
Welcome to Waiting with Love. As always, this is a fellowship-style space for people navigating the messy in-between that comes with waiting. Whether you're waiting for a child, as we are, or waiting for something else, we want you to know that you don't have to wait without hope, and you certainly don't have to wait alone.
This is especially true when the waiting has lasted longer, hurt more, or changed you more than you expected. If you've ever felt stuck in the middle of something you desperately wanted, you are in the right place.
Thank you for being here. Welcome back, everyone. I can't believe how quickly spring is flying by, and it's nice that it's getting nicer outside. Certainly spending a lot more time outdoors. It occurred to me this week that we've been podcasting for a couple of months now and haven't really provided a check-in, done a check-in with where we are and how things are going. So I thought that we would dedicate this episode to a little bit of a check-in, if you're okay with that, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as we've been discussing on several of the pods over the past couple of months, we're still waiting. And, this episode is not about a big announcement. I think that as we've covered at length in multiple different episodes, we will provide updates on where we're at in this journey when we have them available and when we're ready to share those updates. And, as one would expect, they will probably go to close friends and family first. Shout out if any of those people are listening. This is not an invitation to ask. We've talked about this. But, this past week or so, we were waiting for an update that was important in our journey, and we're still waiting on that update. And so I think in the spirit of just doing a check-in, maybe we can talk a little bit about that. But I mean, as we get started here, Andrew, first question to you, a couple months into podcasting, your thoughts, reactions?
Yeah, good question. So, I cannot believe we've been doing this for a few months now. I keep thinking we're like brand new at this. So that's fun. Yeah, it's interesting because you kind of teed up a little bit that we were waiting for an update last week that we are still waiting for. And we could probably talk more about like what that feels like in a little bit. But in a more macro sense, I think it's very easy to like pinpoint moments when one of us is anxious or angry or is depressed or sad or whatnot. But I think since we've started, you and I have been approaching this entire surrogacy process actually better, in a lot of ways. More patience, more understanding. If we want to go back and look at some of the old emails we used to send to our agency, basically threatening them and yelling at them, versus now it's like night and day, right? So again, I'm shocked I'm saying this because I actually don't feel this way at the very moment because we are waiting for an update. But generally, I think we're doing well. I'm doing well,
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that we have certainly found this pod to be a healthy outlet, and I hope that our listeners are feeling that. It was one of our goals as we started, not only to share our journey and some of what we're going through, but also as an outlet for ourselves and helping others to also help ourselves. So I think that's great. I think that from logistics and just technical perspective, producing the pod has become a lot easier. We've gotten a lot faster at it. If I kind of comically think back to episode 0 that took us like 8 hours to record a 12-minute podcast, we're now in the 30-minute podcast takes us about 35 minutes to get ready for and then do the episode, and then about the same to do the editing and get it ready for publishing. But
I'm smiling because yes, but also Also, no more us not on speaking terms by the end of the podcast, or
Right.
getting ready for it, or one of us going to divorce.com/right now, please. And we don't do that anymore. Isn't that nice? Yeah.
That's a benefit. But maybe shifting the focus to this update that we were waiting on this past week, that we're still waiting on, as a general check-in. How are you doing? What's keeping you up at night right now?
Yeah. So we knew there was an event. We'll just say last. I think it was Monday, right?
Hmm.
Last Monday. So we're filming this on a Sunday, so about a week ago, last Monday, we knew there was an event. And because a few weeks ago we talked about the logistics episode, about how long the game of telephone can take, we were under the impression that the event happened on Monday, Tuesday afternoon, or Wednesday more likely was when we get the update. So, Tuesday we didn't hear anything, and it was a big update, so you and I were pretty stressed and anxious, and we emailed in the afternoon. We said, let's wait till the afternoon, let's be fair, and we'll send a nice reminder or email to our caseworker here in the States if he's heard anything. To his credit, he responded almost right away, and said no, and it's actually a holiday right now, where central office is where the comms from the clinic go first. And he said, most likely you're not going to hear till Thursday or even Friday. He said that, All right, that was annoying, but actually it made Wednesday easier, right? We knew we were not going to hear on Wednesday. And that's something we talked about a couple weeks ago, right? We knew we were not going to hear on Wednesday, so it was kind of like, all right, we'll just kind of go back to our jobs, not really think about it too much, nothing we could do. But then Thursday comes along, and then the anxiety comes back up, because now we're refreshing our email over and over again. Anytime somebody calls me or you, one of us, heart stops, right? And it was Thursday afternoon and no update. And so we sent another email. And apparently, I don't know, there's been staffing changes for the person who does updates at the clinic. And now he said that the update wouldn't come till next week, which would be tomorrow or Tuesday, he said. And it's hard, right? Because for all the things we talked about a few weeks ago, number one, the anxiety goes up and down based on, so like today's Sunday, right now I'm fine, but probably tonight it's going to eke up when we start thinking about tomorrow. Sunday Scaries times a million with this, right? And the other thing I struggle with is whatever that update is already done, right? So there's no, it's the fate, the destiny is there already, right? I really struggle with that. I don't know why. Again, maybe it's the faith thing. I pray a lot, and so I don't know if it's that. I don't know what it is, but so. It's hard. It's really hard. We were supposed to get an update from an event that happened last week, and here we are.
Yeah, makes sense. I think for me, I've obviously gone through the same waves. What interestingly has been keeping me up at night lately while we're waiting for this update, and we talked about this a couple months ago, I think, is actually the what if it works? And everything that comes with that. And I think I've just been generally more optimistic. There could be a variety of reasons for that, but I think my anxiety has actually more been, are we prepared as a couple, as individuals, as a family, for our family to grow if we get good news, and if things start to work in our favor after so many times that they haven't. And that's no indication of what this update we were waiting on is. It's just where my head has been going lately.
Yeah, I think that's you and I are very similar in a lot of ways. A lot of people think we're basically the same person sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
One area you and I are fundamentally different, and maybe down the road if we get pregnant and we're ready to go public about this down the road, we could talk more about it. You are a planner. You like to have outline. Like, I'm not even talking about being a parent. I'm talking about like just in life. You like to have outlines. You like to have it scripted. Even the podcast, right? You're more scripted, and I'm more. Let's just do it live and wing it. And that's kind of how I am with life too. That's how I am at work. And there's pros and cons to both approaches. But that's where you and I are just different. Like when it comes to, and again, it's not time to raise a baby yet. There's no baby coming in the next few months, but if there was, my logic is everybody else figures it out, we'll figure it out too, and you're ready to start reading all the books. That's where you and I are just different.
Agreed. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
So, you know, living through this past week that we were expecting an update that never came, you talked a little bit about sort of the time of events that happened over the course of the week and expectations, going up and then going down and then going up again. But I do think that for those of our listeners who are in this process, we have learned some things along the way and even this past week that have helped. I mean, I mentioned at the top that it's spring now and it's getting nicer out. And I do think that as a coping mechanism, that has helped to some extent, that we've been able to spend more time outside. We mowed our lawn for the first time and we turned our sprinklers on and we fertilized and we had a couple of fires outside that may be limited in terms of how long we can keep having fires given the drought situation that Maine is in. But I mean, for you, how is keeping yourself busy, especially because I've been gone so much, helping, not helping?
Yeah, it's interesting. I find I struggle the most at night, like in bed, at the 2 a.m. scaries that we all, that's when anxiety, and that's a lot of anxiety. A lot of that anxiety is irrational. I think that's when a lot of people have anxieties in the middle of the night. It's also during the work week. It's interesting. During the weekend, I'm fine. And again, maybe it's because we know we're not going to get updates unless it's a real emergency, like the water broke, but we're not there yet. So that kind of update's not coming anytime soon. But I think because during the work week, I'm kind of doing the opposite of answering your question, man. I'm kind of telling you what usually triggers me. That's okay. It's the same. I think the problem with the work week is I'm just sitting in front of a computer all day. So I have 3 monitors, and one is just my email, right? Just waiting for updates all day. And then during the weekend, our routine is not as fixed. Some mornings I wake up and go to the gym. Some days we sleep in. Some days I go for a long walk. I watch the Mets for some reason. I don't know, I'm an idiot does that, but I do that. I watch baseball. We go outside and light a fire. I blog about travel, or I book people's trips for travel. So I just have more like different activities I can do that are fun, that keep me busy. But during the work week, I'm usually just bored doing my job. I wouldn't say my job is boring, but it's an office job. It's a corporate job. It's not thrilling, right? And so it's just very easy to get sucked into like the doom scrolling or the doom refreshing or checking my phone every 5 seconds because I'm kind of just doing my work and doing a good job. But like it's very easy to multitask and keep checking and keep refreshing my email, right? So I think we need to find a way. When I say we, I mean me, unless you're better at this, to take some of those weekend habits into the workday during the week because it's the workday where I'm just staring in front of my computer all day where I struggle.
Yeah, it totally makes sense to me. And that is an area that we are probably different again, is because I'm so busy during the week. I'm on calls back to back all the time. During the work week, my actual anxiety is more that I'm going to miss an update, or that in the case that we're waiting on something that I'll be in a meeting, or you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that I might be presenting when that update comes in, and I'm more anxious about not having the capacity in that moment, not only to read what the update is, but to emotionally feel what it feels like, whether it's excitement or disappointment. I mean, because we're still waiting, I don't know what the case may be, but I think my anxiety during the work week is more about, will I be available to process whatever update comes whenever it does come in? And I think on the weekend, as you've said, and I agree, we know that at this stage we're not getting any updates on the weekend. It's a little bit easier on the one hand because I know that although I'll be available, there isn't going to be an update. But on the other, I find myself spending more time on the weekend running those what if scenarios, running the doomsday scenarios. And I think that certainly as the weather is improving, being able to get outside and move a little bit, whether it's doing yard work or just sitting by a fire. I find it relaxing. I like to listen to it. I like to hear the crackling of the wood. I like the smell of the fire, hearing the birds chirp in the background, especially because we do live in a pretty forested area. But I agree that the anxiety during the week and during the weekend are different, and different for both of us.
So you just hit on something. Because you travel more than I do for work, you present more than I do for work, you're on calls, you're on active calls more than I am. I'm more passively on calls usually. You're afraid to miss an update. That's the same thing in me refreshing every 30 seconds. It's like, I was talking about this with my therapist a few weeks ago. What is our obsession? What is the difference if we find out the news, the update, at 2:05 or 2:15? Or 2:30? The update's the update.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. We had a call.
Like the update's not going to change. I missed it. Shit, it flipped. It was a good update because I missed the first 5 minutes of that update. Now it's 2:15. Fuck, it just changed to a bad news. No, it doesn't work that way.
You and I had a call. I can't remember if it was last weekend or the weekend before with one of our followers, and it was a great discussion on a Saturday night. It was great to connect with people who are also on this journey. And I got called out for not using Gemini. So shout out if you're listening. I was using Gemini and asking about that very anxiety about updates, and that was one of its suggestions, was to time block and say I'm only going to check my personal email between 2 and 2:15 and not until 5 p.m. after that, and that giving your brain some certainty of when you'll find out may help to reduce anxiety. But I think it's funny, to your point, Andrew, because I don't know why it's perfectly okay for the clinic or for the agency to wait a week to get us news, but we have to read that news the minute that it comes in and without a second delay. Or, to your point, it's like mentally it's going to change from good news to bad news, which is, a totally irrational conclusion.
So the only thing I thought, maybe this is a conversation should be public on a podcast and more about you and I just having a one-on-one, is things we can control. One thing we can control is I can check my email and see the update. And maybe that's just something, and I was talking about this with my therapist, maybe that's just something I want. Maybe what I don't want is me just not checking. I'm doing work, I'm doing something, watching TV, and then I see a message from, let's just say you, that says, we got bad news. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's almost like maybe I want control over how I find out. Does that make sense? Which is why...
I think this is an interesting point, and I think that there's some validity in this, because if I reflect on the past couple of years, every time that we have gotten good news by email, whoever sees it first, and in many cases we've both seen it at the same time, we have immediately sent a message on whatever, Facebook, text message, doesn't matter. We've immediately messaged the other person, informing them that we got good news. But if you think about this for a second, every time we've gotten bad news by email, neither of us have said anything to the other.
Except once, email, yes, you're right, email, you're right. Phone call, I've told you in person, yeah. By the way, if you're wondering why do we message each other and not just talk to each other, that's a very good question. Probably another question I should talk to my therapist about, but here we are. Because no, this is not Matt, is another part of the country we're messaging. No, Matt sometimes is upstairs and we're just messaging each other. By the way, one day if you ever read our book, you'll find out how we found our foreign exchange student and how we communicate with each other, and it's very similar. So anyway, interesting things. The problem with, where I struggle, and I think this is probably common with anybody with anxiety, is when we don't get an update that we're expecting. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's when my brain starts playing games with me. What if there's bad news but they feel bad, so they're trying to figure out a nice way to tell us? What if it's something ridiculous, like our egg donor was about to, have her eggs extracted, but her flight was diverted from the, she was flying from wherever she's from to the clinic, and the flight was diverted to Timbuktu, and she can't get there, and they never found her again. Again, that sounds ridiculous as I'm saying it, but at 3 a.m. it sounds brilliant. And the problem is, I'm married to somebody who has just as much anxiety as I do, And what he'll usually do, hi Matt, what he'll usually do is say that's ridiculous, and 30 seconds later be like, wow, he's right. That's brilliant. That's exactly what happened. She's in Timbuktu and she's lost forever. You know, maybe not to that extreme, obviously, but that's what happens, right? When we don't get news we're expecting, my brain starts playing games about why did we not get the expected update? And of course, we've talked about the logistics and a million logical reasons, which is basically somebody was out sick, there's a holiday, whatever. But instead of focusing on what likely is the reason, I focus on that 0.5% chance it's something absurd, like they got lost in Timbuktu,
I feel like, too, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, because the updates that we get are so structured in nature by the very nature of the process that we're going through. I think, similar to your point, it also throws us off when there's completely unexpected communication from the agency, which also happens for really good reasons. I mean, we talked a couple of episodes ago about how we needed a document from them, but there have also been times in this journey that they've needed something kind of random from us for whatever reason. And I think that because there's so much anticipation about communication from them, to your point, Andrew, like even if they reach out saying, hey, we need you to sign something, or we realize that, on page 6 of this 20-page contract, you didn't initial the bottom and the lawyer needs you to initial it. Like there's this anxiety about communication with the agency, even when there is no update. I don't know. I don't know if you feel the same, but it's like any communication from them puts us on high alert for
I think,
whatever reason.
yeah, I can answer that for me. That one's easy for me. It's because, as we talked about in dozens of episodes now, probably, we're not really active participants of this process. Whether it's the embryo transfer, whether it's eventual pregnancy, we are just, I hate to say this, but we're just the money until the baby's born. So when the agency reaches out to us for a signature or an action, it's, I think, for me, a thing I can do to contribute to this, ultimately, this baby coming to us eventually. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the urgency. That's why I want to do it as fast as humanly possible. That's why it's like everything gets dropped because they must get the signature this minute, even if I'm going to call the client kind of thing, at work. I think it's psychologically, it's the only way I get to contribute besides paying for it, until the baby's born. I think it's tricky. I know this is a check-in episode, so I think it's very easy to focus on like these, funny little like weird things we do or have anxiety over, including missing egg donors in Timbuktu or whatnot. But let's talk about the wins we've had. Again, while we are not perfect, we still refresh our emails every 5 minutes, or at least I do. Let's just go there. We used to do things like get drunk to avoid dealing with this stuff. We used to do things like go out and party or flirt with other men or, just do unhealthy habits. And now we podcast. Mm-hmm. Now we go outside and go walking and we light fires and, so I think it's very, and again, there's no reason not to poke fun of some of the weird things we still do or some of our habits, but like, I think all the habits we currently have are logical, even they're not logical in some ways, but they're logical. I mean, and even the ones that are not constructive. We're looking to find out if we get this massive update. Of course, we're going to refresh our emails. Like, are you not? I mean, but like that's a better thing to. I mean, even that is better than some other unhealthy things we used to do. And in between that, we still work hard at our jobs. Both doing well at our jobs. We still have all the time in the world. Whenever the boy in France has time to talk to us, we respond within seconds. Usually. Sometimes the time difference makes that complicated, but in general, we have him. We have the dogs. We have our healthy habits. And again, even despite all the waiting and all the setbacks, and we're right now waiting for an update, we're not doing anything that's really harming ourselves besides a little anxiety here and there. So that's a win.
Yeah, I think that's a win. And I think that, whether our listeners are behind us in this journey, ahead of us in this journey, being aware of your habits and your partner's habits as far as waiting goes and waiting for those updates to come in and how you react. is entirely up to you. But I think us being aware of how we both react and knowing some of the idiosyncrasies that we each have, including these irrational thoughts, has helped ground us and keep us a little bit more sane in an extended period of waiting.
All right, so to wrap this up, I'm going to tell a funny story about after our first date you and I had. I got home. We just finished at the kosher deli, which had been a good foreshadow. And I texted my best friend at the time, Becky. You remember Becky? And I said, I met this great guy. We went on a date. We had a wonderful time. We kissed at the end. There's only one problem. And she said, what's that? I think he has more anxiety than I do. And she said, holy shit. Holy hell. That's not going to work. So, yeah. Well, here we are. 15 years later, almost. It still works.
Here we are.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you for being here. If this episode resonates with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to know that they're not alone.
You can find more about us and this community at www.waitingwithlove.com.
And links to our socials, as always, are in the show notes.
Until next time, keep waiting with love.